Nano is the most efficient digital currency in existence. It's basically what a lot of people say is what Bitcoin was supposed to be. One nano transaction has the energy consumption of about 0.000112 kilowatt hours. That's a very, very small number to describe.
But the critics would say that this might sound very good, but it's not as decentralized, for example, as other crypto. So is Nano decentralized? Hi, welcome first. Today we want to discuss about Nano, and I would like you to give like a general understanding about what you do related to Nano, and also what is Nano for those unfamiliar with it.
My name is Horsman. I'm the social media lead for the Nano Foundation. I basically manage all the social media channels that we have. I've been involved in Nano and the Nano Foundation a little bit longer. So I started with crypto in 2017. I really got interested in the payment side of things. And then around 2019, I started to be more involved with Nano. So basically what Nano is Nano is the most efficient digital currency in existence. And efficiency is really a key part of what Nano is, because we think that efficiency is absolutely vital when it comes to controlling and transferring value. So if you have control over your funds, you don't want it to be devalued through, for instance, money printing, right? And so Nano is also a decentralized currency. It's basically what a lot of people say is what Bitcoin was supposed to be. So purely transferring value from one person to the other directly without any intermediaries.
So how does it compare, for example, to Bitcoin and electricity consumption?
Nano has efficiency built in from the core. It doesn't use mining. And so with Bitcoin, for instance, you see this a lot in the headlines on the news, is that the mining has a very high energy consumption. Now with Nano, we don't have mining process at all. Instead, it uses a voting mechanism to make sure that transactions are, that there are no double spends in the transactions. And that basically means that it uses very little energy consumption. So one Nano transaction has the energy consumption of about 0.000112 kilowatt hours. That's a very, very small number to describe.
But the critics would say that this might sound very good, but then it's not as decentralized, for example, other crypto. So is Nano decentralized?
Yes, so Nano is a decentralized currency. And actually, if you look at the amount of entities that it takes to perform a double spend or to basically control the network, Nano is more decentralized than Bitcoin. So with Bitcoin, you have these miners, right? And they use a lot of energy and hardware basically to have their share in the network, in controlling the network, so in creating new blocks. And it takes about 3 or 4 entities, so 3 or 4 miners basically, to have the majority share of the hash power in the network. So 3 or 4 entities to control the network. You could argue that's decentralized, right?
Point actually. Critics would say also, or maybe rather people who don't know, like I'm just asking frankly, like for Bitcoin, anyone can participate in the network. As a validator, basically the miner. It's just theoretical because obviously it needs certain computing power just to participate. So does Nano, like how does Nano compare? Like does it work? And I'm asking about compared to Bitcoin because this is what most people are familiar with, but obviously there's other competitors as well. So how does it compare against Bitcoin, and also how does it compare against alternatives like, for example, Ethereum? Because Ethereum now, people would argue also like it doesn't use that much electricity. It's a competitor. So what do you think about that?
So with Nano, basically the part of hardware and electricity usage is replaced by voting weight. And so that means that every person that owns some Nano has a certain amount of voting weight relative to the amount of Nano that they have. And they can delegate this voting weight to a node in the network that gets to vote on transactions. So which transaction is valid. This makes it more efficient, but on top of that, this also means that users can basically choose how decentralized they want the network to be. And the more Nano you own,
but how does it compare, for example, to Ethereum? Like Ethereum is pretty much similar or a bit different?
It's a bit different because with Ethereum, you basically need to have a node set up yourself to start playing a role in that consensus mechanism, right? To start staking.
People can delegate. So you mean that the delegation process is a bit different from Ethereum? Because from my understanding, like in Ethereum, you can also delegate, but is it harder?
Yeah, so as I understand it, with Ethereum, you need to lock up your coins for a certain amount of time.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and as it currently stands, as far as I know, you also cannot unstake your Ethereum. So once you start staking it,
this was up until the merge. I think now there is a process to unstake, I think, but I'm not sure the exact details.
And so with Nano, the idea is basically that you can delegate your voting weight whenever you want to whichever node you want. So let's say one node gets a high amount of voting weight. Then users in the network can say, hey, this is, this is not a good thing. This makes it less decentralized. So what users can do is instantly delegate their votes to a different node.
Like, because it's easy to participate, does it make it a bit less secure compared to others? Like, because also there is this ties up to another question, which is like Nano confirms within only one block. Like it's not like Nano claiming that exchanges approve of the transaction within one block. This means it's very high trustworthy. So how does it reach this level of trustworthiness just with one block? And like, how does it tie up to its like security level or compared to others?
Yeah, so basically that's kind of the beautiful thing with Nano is that instead of having one long blockchain, like with Bitcoin, and then in each block, a lot of transactions, instead Nano has, every user has their own blockchain. And the nodes in the network, they get to vote which blocks are valid. So if you make a transaction, you create a new block, then the nodes in the network vote on that block if it's valid. And with Bitcoin, you have these 51% attacks basically, which has to do with the decentralization. So with Nano, that's actually 67%. So a block needs to get 67% of the online voting weight.
It's actually because if I understand correctly, even Ethereum, even though it's like a bit similar or like at least closer to Nano than Bitcoin, it needs only 51%. So this is a very interesting information.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that it's voting per block, basically, that per transaction that users make. So this is kind of a big part of what makes the system totally different. With Ethereum, you still have, just like Bitcoin, one blockchain. And basically the person that wins the election, right, that gets to create a new block, gets to put the transactions in. Instead, with Nano, it's each transaction it's a block in itself that gets voted on, basically, by the network. And when it reaches that 67% of the voting weight, that basically means like this block is approved, and then it gets added to the network. This means that it's, in a way, it's more secure. Only thing you could argue is that you have the 67% necessary of voting weight to approve a block. And so that also means that if someone controls 33% or more than 33%, so more 34% of all the voting weight, they could basically stall the network. So it doesn't make the network less secure, but if one entity were to have that more than 34% of the voting weight, that could stall the network. And so that's kind of I want to say sort of a trade-off, basically.
I think Nano have like, if I understand correctly, it's like 200 something validator, or it's a different number.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of validators.
So let's say, for example, it's like 50 validators. They can basically stall the network.
Well, it works a little bit different because it depends on the amount of voting weight that nodes have.
So it's not just like, for example, like Bitcoin, you just connect to the network, you already count as equal validator, as an equal validator.
Exactly, it's different from that. Yeah, it's different from that because.
So basically, they would need to purchase almost like 30% of the stock of Nano stock. Is it correct?
Of Nano, yeah, of the coins in the network.
Possible because technically, because there's not enough of that on the market itself. So even if you buy up all the exchanges, yes.
Yeah, and the idea behind it is as well that, let's say you were to buy up a lot of Nano, so you get a higher percentage of voting weight. that would also mean that you have a high stake in the network, right? You have a lot of Nano,
Yeah.
and you don't want to devalue that Nano. Why would you attack a network that you have a lot
Because
of
people
money
would
in?
make the argument, even governments can do that just for nefarious purposes, not for monetary purposes. But if you see about it, when the push comes to shove, like when it's actual real, they have custody of crypto, like what we see with Bitcoin happens a lot, is that this same argument, they never do try to use it for any nefarious, like for example, dump it on the market or anything. In fact, they hold it longer just to increase the value. So, I mean, the monetary aspect is nothing to be neglected. It's really powerful. So yeah, it's a very good point.
Yeah.
But I noticed, like when you mentioned about having multiple blockchains, or rather like it's a very different mechanism. Does that allow it to work offline? Like for example, let's say the internet is cut, because I heard like there's some mechanism like you can work offline in some capacity between peer-to-peer. Is this possible on a Nano network?
So basically, you do need to be online to create a transaction. But on the other end, the receiver doesn't need to be online
I see.
to receive the transaction. So yeah, in a way,
Let's say, for
once
example, I'm sending, because like each wallet has its own blockchain. Is it similar to this or no?
yeah, exactly. Each account
Let's say,
basically.
I know with the traditional wallets, obviously you need to be online because mostly it's routed through their node. But for example, let's say you have your own node, and maybe there's two parties, like let's say not even two parties, let's say within one country. So this country, the internet was cut off from the internet. Would they be able to set up a node to trade together, like to transfer between each other and then sync later to the network, or it's not possible?
So I do think you need to be online
I
for
see.
Nano to work. Yeah, you do need to have an internet connection. That's basically the
Yeah, I mean,
only
long
requirement.
term, obviously you need to sync with them. But like, for example, Bitcoin, you can actually do something like this. Like you can, especially I think with Lightning or something. So and then you can sync to the network later on.
Yeah.
So interesting. Okay. So how about like your view on the position of Nano in the market? Like how, because like when you compare it to others, like it's not as the people are not as aware of it, even the people within the crypto ecosystem. So how do you think you can alter this view?
So for us, basically, we try to reach a lot outside of the cryptocurrency market. So we know the cryptocurrency market. There's a lot of people in there, obviously, that are interested
So you search
in
like for a different bond instead of fishing in the same bond.
exactly, and for a large part, that's also because in the cryptocurrency market, we've seen that a lot of people now are there for investment purposes, right? To make more money, and it's become kind of a game of greed, you know, and who can sell at the top, basically. And we really see Nano not as an investment vehicle, you know, not as an asset to be purchased and sold with gains. We see Nano as a peer-to-peer digital currency, and we want it to be used as a currency, and especially in the places in the world where they need something like Nano.
So you rule out all the people in the crypto space, or just like basically just more to target like people who are outside the crypto space?
Yeah, and one of the focus markets that we have is, for instance, Nigeria,
I see.
and we have ambassadors in Nigeria that encourage people to use Nano. They spread awareness about Nano in Nigeria,
For
and
people
they
who
are
don't
doing
know,
a
Nigeria
fantastic
is
job at it.
the most populous country within Africa, so it's huge. So it's a huge.
Yeah, we've done some research about Nigeria as well, seeing the internet penetration and the amount of mobile phones they have there, right? And also the currency that they have there, the Naira, which is getting devalued a lot because of inflation. Right?
Hyperinflated already. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we see that as a perfect, basically fertile soil for something like Nano to grow.
So would you advise anyone to look into Nano? And like, for example, if someone, for example, is fixated on Bitcoin, because a lot of people who just enter the crypto space, they just see only Bitcoin. So is this like a lost cause, or maybe they can also like maybe get the idea of Nano?
Well, of course, you know, like Nano started kind of as a reaction to Bitcoin, right? So in 2014, Colin LeMahieu, the founder of Nano, saw that Bitcoin just had some flaws that made it not ideal at all as a peer-to-peer digital currency. And that's how Nano basically got started to solve these problems with Bitcoin, but also with traditional currencies. But we do have our place as well in the cryptocurrency space, of course. And I would argue that for the people that are really looking at what could be a digital currency that can actually be used for transactions, to look into Nano, because, you know, being able to make transactions without any fees on a sustainable network, that's what a currency should be. You know, global instant transactions on a decentralized secure network with zero fees. So yeah, I would definitely encourage people.
Role, like, does the foundation have like a role in that, or does it you leave it to the maybe the ambassadors or the community to do this job, like basically, yeah, to convince others of the practicality of Nano? Like, how does the foundation fit into the ecosystem, like in the awareness ecosystem for Nano?
Yeah, so we as Nano Foundation do spread awareness about Nano, but we also see it as sort of a grassroots movement where the community that we have a lot of very enthusiastic people in our community, and they really, really want to help spread awareness about Nano, encourage other people to use Nano, encourage businesses to use Nano. Now, we obviously do that as well. You know, we contact businesses. We try to help them integrate Nano wherever we can.
I think you have like some way for the websites to integrate Nano donations or something like that. Maybe also you can look like about the Brave, you know, the PAT, the back attention token, basic attention token. If you can maybe make something like this with a partnership with any specific browser. So basically, it's automatically, because currently the Nano plugin for donation, you have to do it manually. So obviously the website have to do it, and also the visitor. But for example, with something like the pet attention token, they basically is almost automated. So do you think something like that can happen in the future? Like maybe a plugin that you put in your browser and it automatically pays for websites instead of
so basically the idea is that, you know, we do not create those types of tools or browsers. We are purely for creating the transaction, the currency, and also encouraging people to use the currency and to integrate the currency.
Development within Nano core is just for the foundation just focuses on the core development within Nano, and then the developers and the community focus on the applications. So
exactly.
what because I saw when I was checking the distribution of Nano, there was like a significant amount, like it's not like the majority of the funds or anything, but a significant amount of funds dedicated to the developer fund. Is this ever being used, or how does it work?
So I think about 5% of the total supply was put in the developer fund. Now, by now, that 5% is way less than 5%. And that's the thing. We are a non-profit organization. So we do not have some sort of profit model or anything. And we also believe that, you know, as a foundation creating a currency, we should not be the ones profiting from that currency.
So when Nano started, was it like some other tokens, like for example, a VC venture, or how did it start out when the founder started?
So it started out with faucets. So what we did was we spread the currency, not by selling it, not by having investors and investment funds. Actually, the currency was created and spread around the world using faucets. So users, do you know these CAPTCHAs that they have on websites where you have to click on the boxes with like the traffic light? So basically anyone that did that and solved the CAPTCHA.
Just to make sure nobody automates it and basically takes all of the supply.
Exactly, yeah. And so everyone that solved those CAPTCHAs got a little bit of Nano. It's a way to distribute the supply without it.
An innovative way. I mean, I haven't heard about any other crypto who did that, so it's very nice.
Yeah, the idea behind it is as well that it's distributed to people that need it the most. You know, not someone that has a lot of money to buy it, but people that put in the work and the time and then get a little bit of a reward, you know. And this was very successful because a lot of it got distributed to, for instance, people in Venezuela, where it actually paid out more than some actual jobs, right? So people would be doing these CAPTCHAs all day.
Because the value exploded at some points in time. It was huge as well. Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you comment, for example, also like about people who would say, for example, a bigger market cap crypto like Bitcoin when it falls down, it just falls down. Because I know the price is not everything, but it's also like right now, most of the stuff in our daily lives is priced in fiat. So even if someone is in hyperinflation environment, they could opt in to use, for example, the dollar or something more stable. So what do you think can stabilize the price a bit? Like not exactly like perfect stable, because all the crypto space is still young. But what do you think the catalyst that might actually make Nano like a bit more stable and usable, like within the ecosystem?
So we see it as utility and use cases is really the driving force behind the price appreciation. Now we try not to look too much at the price. We really want to just create use cases for Nano, and then if the price, basically the price of Nano depends on supply and demand, right? And the beautiful thing with Nano is the supply is fixed. Like there can never be more Nano created. So it's basically all demand.
It's not only about one thing, like actually not the price as much as like adoption, because when the price drops hugely, it's very hard to hold the asset and use it. Because if you imagine you're holding the asset, even if you're using it for a single transaction, and then you convert it back to something else, and then it drops in value with a significant amount, it actually affects its utility as well. But also, like this can see in the network, like a lot of coins dropped in the traffic for above $1, like the actual transaction, like bigger transaction, or so it dropped significantly for some coins, some others not as much. Like for example, obviously Bitcoin, because the network is already have a huge popularity, so it's still almost 3 transactions per second. It didn't change much. For others, it's increased, like Binance. For Nano, it's dropped like significantly. It's obviously the utility didn't change like in the other aspects, but the utility of having the network effects, because let's say, for example, we both have Nano, so it's perfect, right? As the more people have it, the more people transact with it, its utility increases, because then more merchants are accepting it, and I can pay more people with it. Actually, I pay some friends with Nano just because it's very convenient. So I just like want to like understand that the foundation just tries to keep like a hands-off approach. But what is the plans, maybe just like general plans to increase awareness and increase traffic on the network and increase adoption in somehow, like other than Nigeria, for example, like worldwide, like what are you doing, or what can you do for that to increase adoption?
Yeah, we want to create a demand for Nano, right? And demand is basically having use cases for Nano where people actually need Nano, want to use Nano or need to use Nano in daily life, but also within businesses. And so there's multiple sort of larger partnerships that we are working on currently, larger use cases. And these have been floating around in the Nano community for a longer time, and people always have a lot of questions about it.
Or any hints?
Yeah, so there's, for instance, the Flow Hub use case, which is it's a company that basically does payments in the cannabis space in the United States. They're working on integrating.
It's discriminated against, even though it's legal in the US. In some states, it's discriminated against from the traditional banking. So that's
Exactly, yeah.
I don't condone any of this, but I mean, it's just a personal choice, basically. And if it's legal, then it doesn't make sense to discriminate against it.
Exactly. Even though it's legal, within the banking space, it's always very difficult for dispensaries in the United States. On top of that, there's also Capture, which is basically payment terminals in the UK. And they work a lot in very large stadiums, for instance, for sports events, right? And then there's Trustable, which is a new company in the foreign exchange space, which is also a very, very interesting one.
So you would use it maybe for a bigger transfers, or like faster transfers? Is it like high frequency transfers, something like that?
Yeah, so we have on our YouTube channel, we have some videos, or at least one video about Trustable from our meetup in London this year, where a lot is
What is the name of the YouTube channel, just in case someone wants to search for it? I'll put also the links in the descriptions, but what is the name of the YouTube channel?
Nano Currency, yes.
You have other channels, like in other websites?
Yeah, we have at Nano on Twitter. Then we have Nano Currency as well on Instagram. We have Facebook, we have LinkedIn. We can drop it all below in the description.
Perfect then. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, it's like very, very interesting currency, and like it's right now, yeah, the traffic is not huge, but actually the awareness is increasing, if I understand correctly, like in the crypto space. And being like free is a game changer, because then you can like, obviously we just count the bigger transactions, like because we in our metrics we just count like above $1, but there is a huge use case for microtransactions, which is almost impossible with other crypto. So I think this is also a very interesting use case for it. So
Yeah,
thanks.
definitely.
Yeah. So nice to meet you, and yeah, have a good day. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. All right. Have a nice day.